Is it safe to go back to school? The Trump administration and the CDC are going back and forth over the guidelines for safely reopening schools this fall. Here's what the CDC director had to say about it this morning on GMA.
So our guidelines are our guidelines, but we are going to provide additional reference documents to aid basically communities that are trying to reopen K through 12. It's not a revision of the guidelines. It's just to provide additional information to help the schools be able to use the guidance that we put forward.
Well, this follows President Trump's threat yesterday to cut off federal funding for schools if they don't reopen. Meantime, millions of families are really struggling to pay their bills, and we feel you here at DBL. A new survey found that 32% of U.S. households were not able to pay their full rent or mortgages this month. I read this is the 16th week in a row that over 1 million people have filed for unemployment. The 16th week in a row. If we're letting people out of jail because we're concerned about COVID, Jeff, why are we okay sending our kids back to school?
Well, first I want to address the mortgage. Of course. I mean, it seems obvious that people can't pay their bills if they can't go to work, right? You put two and two together. I don't know why people are so shocked by this. Now, getting into the point of sending kids back to school, this is a long discussion, and we each have a 30-second mouthpiece to talk about.
Right.
First of all, we're talking about whether sending them back or not. We're not saying, what about K through 8? What about preschool? What about those kids because they're less likely to catch COVID? Right. Why don't we break down different things? I understand, I'm assuming Trump is talking about big institutions, meaning universities, because they generate a lot of money. So that's what he's going for. But why can't we break this down and have a logical conversation about this? Because a lot of working moms, they have kids K through 8 or even in preschool that they can go back to work, but they have to watch their kids now.
Right, working dads. There's a great article in New York Times, Lindsay, that said, look, this is said, the coronavirus says you can have a kid or you can have a job. You can't have both in this coronavirus to be able to support yourself. How do you feel about this, the mortgages? It's going to be August 1st anytime soon. We need another rent due. And how do you also feel about schools reopening?
Well, my first thought was like, no, absolutely not. Don't reopen them. But then I had a conversation with one of my friends that is a parent, and it's like some people can't work from home. Some people don't have the luxury or the financial capacity to have their kids be home all school year. So I understand exactly what Jeff is saying. But I know you talked about President Trump speaking on this, and he talked about how Denmark and Germany successfully reopened their schools. And the trouble with that is that Denmark and Germany both have a huge downtick in coronavirus cases, and they also allocated tons of money for cleaning to make sure that these kids don't bring home these viruses to their parents. So if we're not going to also put money behind making sure that these kids are extra safe, I'm just really precautious, even though I do have in mind the idea that if parents are struggling to figure out how to make this work, there has to be an option for those people also.
Yeah, right. When you compare to Norway and Denmark, first of all, they have much fewer people than we do. But also, they've taken care of the problem with the downturn. We can't just have our cake and eat it too and go back to school thinking it's okay. In my opinion, we're risking too many kids' lives. But I also know parents desperately need time to go back to work. I just think we need a better plan.